The library was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of an old wooden chair. It was well past midnight, but Leo had moved from the crowded competition hall to this quieter space on the second floor. Here, the glow of his laptop was the only source of light in his corner. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, but for a moment, he didn't type. He stared at the empty line of code on his screen, his mind spinning through the challenge's prompt. Change the way people interact with time. It was abstract, almost philosophical. Most students would build a scheduling app or some clever reminder system. But that wasn't enough for Leo. He wanted something that would make time itself feel different. Personal, tangible, even emotional. He remembered something his grandfather once told him. Photographs freeze moments, but they can't bring them back to life. Time moves in one direction, and that's what makes it precious. That idea had stuck with him for years. What if he could create a tool that didn't just record moments but made them feel alive again, as if you were stepping back into them? Leo opened a blank document and started outlining. He called it EchoTime, a platform that would allow users to capture not just images or video, but layers of context, location, ambient sounds, temperature, even the subtle background noise of a street or room. The app would then reconstruct these elements in a way that, when replayed, felt like a genuine portal into the past. He imagined someone years from now putting on a pair of earbuds, holding their phone, and suddenly being surrounded by the exact atmosphere of their wedding day, their first apartment, or a quiet evening with friends. Not just looking at a photo, but feeling the moment. But there was a catch. Pulling in all that sensory data and replaying it seamlessly would require an innovative compression method, something no mainstream app had yet achieved. It wasn't impossible, just hard, and hard was where Leo thrived. He began coding the framework for sensory data capture, pulling from his personal library of small experimental projects. One file contained a lightweight audio filter he'd developed months ago for fun, which could remove intrusive sounds while keeping natural ambience intact. Another contained a geolocation script that could store and reference environmental markers. Slowly, these fragments began to assemble into the skeleton of EchoTime. The clock on his laptop ticked past 2 a.m. His coffee had gone cold, but he barely noticed. Ideas flowed faster than he could type. He sketched a concept for the user interface, minimal, intuitive, and focused on the moment rather than menus or clutter. Downstairs, the sound of footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. Maya appeared at the top of the stairs, holding 2 paper cups of fresh coffee. She walked over, setting one beside him without a word. "You're really not sleeping, huh?" she asked softly. Leo smirked without looking up. "Sleep is for people not trying to bend time." She leaned against the table, watching his screen. "This isn't just another app, is it?" "No," he said. "It is something that I'll make people feel like they can walk into their own memories. Not just watch them. Be there." Maya didn't respond right away. She knew Leo's ideas could be ambitious, sometimes too ambitious. But there was a determination in his voice that made her think he might actually pull it off. "Okay," she said finally. "But if you're going to make this work, you'll need a way to handle massive amounts of data without making it unmanageable. That's the bottleneck." "I know," Leo replied. "That's why I'm going to build a custom compression algorithm, one that learns over time." Her eyebrows lifted. "You mean AI-driven compression?" He nodded. "It's the only way to make EchoTime work on normal devices. And if I can make it faster than anything out there, we were not just talking about winning this challenge, we were talking about something tech giants will want to buy." They exchanged a look, and for the first time that night, Maya smiled. "You're going to need more coffee." The hours slipped away, each keystroke pulling EchoTime closer to reality. Lines of code became modules, modules became features, and the features began to hum together in the quiet rhythm of a working prototype. By the time the first light of dawn crept through the high library windows, Leo had built the foundation of something far greater than the competition required. He wasn't sure if it would work flawlessly yet, but if it did, it wouldn't just win the challenge. It would change the way people thought about time itself. The late afternoon sun spilled through the tall glass windows of the university's computer science building, bathing the amphitheater in a warm, golden glow. The rows of students, each hunched over a laptop, hummed with nervous anticipation. Fingers tapped impatiently on keyboards, coffee cups balanced dangerously on desk edges, and the low murmur of whispered strategy filled the air. At the front, Professor Alan Reed stood at the podium, his wiry frame outlined against the projection screen. His reputation preceded him, a man who had written code for some of the earliest commercial internet platforms, now slightly weathered by years of guiding eager, sometimes overconfident minds. He cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. "Welcome," Reed began, his voice even but carrying the weight of authority, to the annual 24-hour programming challenge. A faint smile crept across his face as he glanced around the room. "Some of you think you're here to prove you're the fastest coder. Some believe this is a test of endurance. But this is not about who can type the most lines of code in a day. This is about innovation." The word hung in the air like a dare. "You will have exactly 24 hours, Reed continued, to design and prototype a piece of software that changes the way people interact with time." A few students exchanged puzzled looks. Others immediately started jotting ideas in notebooks. Reed leaned forward slightly. "The winner will not necessarily have the cleanest code or the flashiest interface. The winner will have an idea that forces us to look at the world differently." Among the crowd sat Leo Marston. His dark hair was slightly unkempt, his eyes carrying the faint shadows of too many late nights in front of a monitor. Leo wasn't nervous. Not exactly. He thrived in moments like this when the pressure seemed almost impossible and the clock became the enemy. Beside him sat Maya Alvarez, his closest friend in the program and a master at building user interfaces that felt alive. She tapped him lightly on the arm. "So," she whispered, "you want to pair up for this?" Leo shook his head without looking at her. "Not this time." Maya frowned. "You always do this lone wolf thing. You know the challenge is collaborative for a reason, right?" "It's not that I don't want help," Leo said quietly, finally turning to meet her eyes. "It's just this idea I have, it's hard to explain. I don't think it would make sense until it's real." Maya leaned back, crossing her arms. "Fine, but don't come begging for help when you hit your first wall." The large digital timer on the wall flickered to life, its red numbers counting down from 24 minutes. Professor Reed raised a hand dramatically. "And begin." A wave of movement surged through the room. Students scrambled for cables, sketched designs on tablets, and opened code editors. The air filled with the clicking of keys, punctuated by bursts of whispered brainstorming. Leo didn't move at first. He sat still, letting the chaos swirl around him. In his mind, the image of his project began to take shape. Not just an app, but an entirely new way for people to capture and share their experiences. Not a simple photo, not a fleeting social media post, but something deeper. Something that could bridge the gap between now and the future. Pulling his laptop closer, he began typing with deliberate precision. His screen filled with a basic structure, folders for data handling, encryption protocols, and a placeholder for a feature he hadn't even fully defined yet. His idea was ambitious, maybe even absurd. But that was the point. Hours passed. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, and the windows turned into black mirrors. The amphitheater buzzed with the scent of takeout food, the hiss of energy drink cans being cracked open, and the occasional groan of frustration when a program refused to cooperate. From her seat across the room, Maya occasionally glanced at Leo. His focus was intense, almost unnerving. She knew him well enough to recognize when he was on to something big, and she also knew he wouldn't stop until it was finished. By midnight, a few students had already given up, their heads resting on keyboards. Others pushed forward, fueled by caffeine and adrenaline. Leo remained in his seat, eyes locked on his code, unaware of the world beyond the glow of his screen. Somewhere deep in the lines of logic and the skeleton of his prototype, the heart of his creation was beginning to beat. The sun was barely up when Leo shut his laptop and rubbed his eyes. His head was heavy, but his mind refused to rest. The prototype of Echo Time existed now, raw, unpolished, but real. It was like seeing the faint outline of a sculpture in a block of marble. He just had to carve it out. Maya had left an hour earlier to grab breakfast for the both of them, leaving Leo alone in the quiet library. Outside, the morning light spilled through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the floor. He reopened his laptop, pulled up the code, and took a deep breath. The biggest challenge was an IAD capturing the sensory data. That part he had mostly figured out by repurposing his earlier projects. The true obstacle was the compression algorithm. Without it, Echo Time would be bloated, slow, and useless to the average person. The magic was in making it seamless. Leo began by studying how the brain stores memories. He read papers on sensory processing, focusing on how the human mind doesn't record everything, but instead stores patterns and key details. A memory of a beach, for example, didn't need every grain of sand. It needed the sound of the waves, the warmth of the sun, the scent of salt in the air. What if the software did the same thing? He muttered to himself. Instead of saving all the raw data, Echo Time could identify the most critical sensory markers and recreate the rest on playback through AI-driven simulation. That way, the file size could be a fraction of what traditional recording would require, but the emotional authenticity would remain. By mid-morning, he had built a small test version of this concept. He fed it a set of sensory inputs from a short video clip: audio, temperature, geolocation, and light levels. Then he let the algorithm compress it down to an impossibly small file. When he hit playback, the results made his chest tighten. The sound was there, not in perfect high fidelity, but in a way that felt right. The ambient hum of the street returned, the faint chill of a windy afternoon translated into subtle visual cues. It was imperfect, yes, but it was undeniably alive. He stood up pacing, his heart racing faster than it should for a simple test. It was the first time he felt that Echo Time could truly work. Maya returned with 2 breakfast sandwiches and an energy drink. "You look like you've either discovered the secret to the universe or completely broken your code." Leo spun his laptop toward her. "Watch this." She sat down, slipped on the headphones, and leaned over the screen. For 30 seconds, she was somewhere else. Not in a quiet library with cold coffee, but standing on a busy city street at sunset. She pulled the headphones off slowly. "That feels weird," she said. "Weird in a good way, like my brain thinks I was actually there." "That's the point," Leo replied. "It's not perfect yet, but it works. This is the breakthrough we needed." They ate quickly, the conversation buzzing with possibilities. If this compression system could scale, Echo Time wouldn't just be a novelty. It could become a dominant force in memory preservation. Travel companies could offer immersive souvenirs. Museums could recreate historical events in sensory detail. Families could keep loved ones close in ways photos never could. But along with the excitement came the first real tension. Maya pointed out that large tech corporations had been working on similar ideas in secrecy for years. If they caught wind of Echo Time, they might try to buy it, or bury it before it could compete. "We need to keep this under the radar until it's ready," she warned. "If anyone gets even a hint of what we're building, they'll either copy it or try to lock us out." Leo agreed, though part of him felt an odd thrill at the idea of going head-to-head with industry giants. Still, secrecy was the smarter move, for now. The next step was clear: stress testing. They needed to feed Echo Time with larger, more complex memories and see if the compression algorithm held up. That meant collecting real-world data, soundscapes, temperature readings, light variations, across different environments. They left the library with backpacks full of sensors, microphones, and a single battered laptop. Over the next several hours, they recorded bustling coffee shops, quiet parks, crowded subway platforms, and the dim interior of an antique store. Each location offered a different challenge for the algorithm to process. By the time the sun dipped low in the sky, Leo had hundreds of data samples. Back at his apartment, he ran them through Echo Time one by one. The results weren't perfect. There were glitches, distortions, and occasional mismatches between the audio and visual cues. But the core experience worked in every single test. Leo leaned back in his chair, exhausted but exhilarated. "We have something real," he whispered. Maya, sitting beside him, nodded slowly. "Yeah, and now we just have to make sure no one else gets their hands on it before we re-ready." Outside, the city lights flickered on. Inside, the glow from Leo's laptop illuminated the determination on his face. He didn't know it yet, but the first breakthrough had just set in motion a chain of events that would put him directly in the crosshairs of some of the most powerful companies in the world. The cafe was loud with the usual late-morning rush, clinking mugs, hissing steam, and the murmur of overlapping conversations. Leo and Maya sat at a small table in the corner, their backpacks resting between their feet. To anyone watching, they looked like two friends catching up over coffee. But under the table, Leo's laptop was running a fresh set of Echo Time recordings, each one processed with the updated compression algorithm. He slid the headphones toward Maya. "This is the park recording from yesterday," he said. She put them on, eyes closing for a moment. A slow smile formed. "It feels warmer than it actually was," she said. "Not temperature-wise, more like emotionally warmer. Did you tweak the sensory weighting?" "Yeah," Leo said, lowering his voice. "I prioritized certain audio frequencies and added a bit of environmental blending. Makes the experience smoother." Before she could reply, someone brushed past their table, almost spilling Maya's coffee. She pulled back instinctively, frowning. The man didn't apologize, just kept moving toward the exit, a phone pressed to his ear. Leo barely noticed until Maya leaned closer. "He was watching your screen," she whispered. Leo froze. "You sure?" "Yes." He slowed down right as he passed and tilted his head toward the laptop. He glanced toward the door. The man was gone. It could have been nothing. Maybe the stranger was just curious. But a sharp unease settled in Leo's stomach. The timing felt too precise, too much like the beginning of something. They decided to pack up and leave. Outside, the air was crisp, the sky a pale winter blue. Leo scanned the street but didn't spot the man again. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Back at the apartment, they ran another set of stress tests. Echo Time handled more complex memory files now. Street markets, concerts, even the chaotic soundscape of a train station at rush hour. The glitches were fewer, the playback sharper. But that night, as Leo was reviewing the logs, he noticed something strange. A set of background noise patterns that didn't match any of their recorded environments. It was faint, buried under the other sensory data, but there, a low-frequency hum, almost like an audio watermark. "Maya!" he called. She leaned over his shoulder, studying the waveform. "That's not ours," she said. It wasn't. They had recorded everything themselves, in controlled conditions. No unexplained sounds should have been there. The only possibility was that it had been introduced after the recording, perhaps during the brief moment in the cafe when the stranger was near the laptop. "Could someone have accessed the files wirelessly?" Leo asked. Maya nodded grimly. If they had the right tools and knew what to look for, yes. The realization hit like a weight. Someone might already know Echo Time exists. They stayed up late, running checks on the laptop. No signs of malware, no obvious breaches. But the hum remained in 2 of the files. It wasn't dangerous, not yet. But it was proof that someone had touched their work. "From now on," Maya said, "we don't work in public. No cafes, no parks, nowhere someone can get close." Leo agreed, though he hated the idea of hiding away. Still, secrecy had become their shield. The following week, they moved operations to Maya's uncle's unused photography studio. The place was perfect. High ceilings, thick walls, no neighbors close enough to overhear. They set up workstations in the corner, surrounded by stacks of old camera equipment and rolls of faded backdrops. For days, they buried themselves in development. The algorithm was stable now, but the interface needed work. Leo wanted Echo Time to feel effortless, a single tap to record a moment, another to relive it. Maya focused on refining the sensory calibration so playback felt natural for every user. Then one afternoon, while testing a new calibration set, Leo heard something in the recording. Not the hum from before, but a voice. It was faint, distant, and distorted, almost swallowed by static. But the words were clear enough to make his skin prickle. "Not ready yet." He pulled off the headphones. "Maya, you need to hear this." She listened, her face pale. "That's not me, and it's not you." The voice didn't belong to anyone they knew. It wasn't in their original recording, and yet it had embedded itself deep in the memory file, almost as if it had been whispered from the other side of the experience. "What does it mean?" Leo asked. Maya shook her head slowly. "I think it means someone's already inside Echo Time." The voice haunted Leo all night. Even after shutting down the laptop, the words kept looping in his mind. Not ready yet. They weren't just strange. They were deliberate, like someone leaving a note in the margins of a secret document. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual. The winter light outside was pale and cold, spilling across the quiet street. Maya was already at the studio, hunched over the desk, scanning through layers of Echo Time's code. "Find anything?" Leo asked, dropping his backpack. "Not exactly," she said. "The voice isn't in the raw data. It only appears after the playback engine processes the file. So it's injected during output, not input," he said. "Exactly. Which means whoever's doing this understands Echo Time-S architecture, maybe better than we do." That thought tightened the knot in Leo's stomach. Only a handful of people in the world even knew what Echo Time was. How could someone outside have dissected it so quickly? For the next few days, they took extra precautions. The studio stayed locked at all times. Laptops were kept offline unless absolutely necessary. Backups were stored on encrypted drives, hidden in a place only they knew. Still, the unease followed them everywhere. It wasn't paranoia if the signs were real, and they were starting to appear more often. One evening, on his way back from a supply run, Leo noticed a black sedan parked half a block from the studio. The same car was there the next day, and the day after. It never moved until after dark. "Maya," he said, standing by the window. "We have company." She came over, peeking from behind the curtain. The sedan's windows were tinted too dark to see inside. "Could be coincidence," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. They decided to test it. The next morning, Leo left early, carrying an empty backpack and heading in the opposite direction of the studio. Within minutes, the sedan pulled out and followed at a distance. It trailed him through 3 turns, then stopped when he entered a crowded subway station. By the time he came back above ground, the car was gone. When he returned to the studio, Maya's face told him everything. The sedan had been parked outside again within 20 minutes. "This isn't random," she said. "They're watching us." But who were they? A tech company afraid of what Echo Time could do? A private investor wanting to buy it before it was finished? Or something else entirely? That night, they reviewed every file, every line of code, and every log from the past month. Buried in the metadata of one memory file, they found a string of numbers. 0217-1945. A date and time, Leo guessed. February 17th, 7:45 p.m., Maya said. But for what? Neither of them could answer. The date was only a week away. Over the next few days, the tension grew heavier. The sedan stayed close. Sometimes it was parked across the street, other times it waited at the end of the block. Leo started varying his routes home. Maya stopped leaving alone. Every knock at the door made them exchange a glance before answering. 3 days before February 17th, a new recording glitched mid-playback. Not the hum, not the voice. This time, an image, just for a split second, flashed across the headset S-View, the corner of a street sign. Pause it, Maya said. They scrubbed back frame by frame. The sign read, Pierce and 9th. That's downtown, Leo said. They looked at each other. The timestamp in the glitch matched the date in the metadata. Someone's telling us to be there, Maya said. Or warning us, Leo countered. Neither option felt safe, but neither did ignoring it. Whoever was behind this seemed capable of embedding information directly into echo time. If they wanted Leo and Maya at Pierce and 9th, there had to be a reason, good or bad. For the rest of the week, the sedan didn't appear. The absence was somehow worse than its presence, like the silence before a storm. On February 17th, they prepared cautiously. No laptops, no sensitive data, just 2 small audio recorders, a phone with location tracking disabled, and the kind of restless determination that comes from having too many unanswered questions. At 7:30 p.m., they reached Pierce and 9th. The street was nearly empty, lit by a flickering lamppost and the orange glow from a diner's neon sign. They stood at the corner, pretending to check a phone, scanning every face that passed. At 7:45, a man in a dark coat stepped out of the diner, glanced at them, and walked toward a narrow alley. He didn't look back, but his pace was slow, almost inviting. Maya met Leo's eyes. Do we follow? Leo hesitated, feeling the weight of the decision. The voice, the hum, the sedan, the date. They had all led here. He nodded once. We follow. They stepped into the alley, the glow of the street fading behind them. Somewhere in the shadows ahead, a voice spoke. Not from a headset this time, but in the cold, open air. You're late. The studio felt smaller the moment Leo plugged the drive into the offline laptop. A small plain window appeared on the screen with a single prompt. Secure Vault activated. Session expires in 29 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes. Maya exhaled sharply. It's real. No flashy graphics, no complicated menus, just a countdown clock in the corner ticking away like a silent heartbeat. Leo opened the vault and found it empty. A clean, protected space to store their code. It was so well isolated that the laptop didn't even recognize its own wireless card. Completely sealed. This is military level, Leo muttered. Maya didn't sit down. She paced behind him, eyes darting between the screen and the window. So now what? We move everything here? Leo hesitated. If we do, there's no going back. The second we transfer echo time, the original files get wiped. Maya stopped pacing. Then we do it. You saw the way he talked. If someone's really after us, we can't just leave the code out there. They both knew she was right. But moving echo time into that vault was like locking it in a glass case surrounded by explosives. Safe, but only for a short time. Leo started the transfer. Line after line of code streamed into the vault, the clock still ticking in the corner. The system confirmed the deletion of the old files automatically, leaving nothing behind but fragments that no recovery tool could ever piece together. When it was done, Leo leaned back in his chair. Well, now we're officially on the clock. The next days blurred together. They split the workload. Leo refining Echo Time's predictive algorithms, Maya securing its encryption layers. The tension in the room was constant. The smallest sound outside made them freeze. Day 25. Maya found a corrupted segment in the data compression module. It was small, but it could destabilize the entire program. Fixing it would take time they didn't have. Day 21. Leo noticed a spike in power usage on the Studio AS backup grid, as if something was drawing electricity from a hidden source. When he checked the meters, everything looked normal. Too normal. Day 18. Maya got an email on her personal account from an unknown sender. No subject, no body, just an image of the countdown clock, perfectly matching their own. Day 15. They stopped going home. Sleep came in short bursts on the couch or at the desk. The studio became their whole world, a sealed bunker against a storm they couldn't see but could feel pressing closer every hour. Leo started keeping a log, not of code, but of the strange occurrences. A drone hovering outside their window at 3 a.m., streetlights flickering in sequence whenever they walked home. A man with an earpiece sitting in the cafe across the street for 2 days straight, never ordering more than a cup of coffee. Maya tried to focus on the work, but every keystroke felt heavier. She began to wonder if they were building Echo Time for themselves at all, or if they were unknowingly building it for someone else. Day 10. The corrupted module was fixed, but now the predictive algorithm was overclocking itself, running simulations at speeds far beyond what they programmed. It was learning faster than they expected. Day 7. The man from the cafe vanished. That should have been good news. It wasn't. Day 5. A small package arrived with no return address. Inside was a single photograph of Leo and Maya, taken from inside the studio. Neither of them spoke after that. They just worked. The countdown slipped into single digits. Every time they glanced at it, the numbers felt heavier, like gravity itself was pulling them forward to an event they couldn't avoid. Day 3. Maya ran a full security sweep. No cameras, no bugs, nothing that explained the photograph. Day 2. The vault's interface changed subtly. The border around the clock turned red. A new line of text appeared beneath it. Final stage, prepare for release. They didn't know what that meant. Day 1. They finished. Every module was stable. Every safeguard was in place. Echo Time was complete, or as complete as it could be under a 30-day deadline. They sat in silence, the laptop screen glowing in the dim light of the studio. The clock read 00:12:08. Leo turned to Maya. "What happens when it hits 0? Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. "We're about to find out." The numbers kept falling, each second heavier than the last. Somewhere outside, a car engine started. The alley smelled faintly of damp brick and fried food from the diner. Leo's eyes adjusted slowly to the shadows, revealing the man in the dark coat standing a few steps ahead. His face was partially hidden under the brim of a hat, but his voice was calm. "You're late," he repeated. Maya took a cautious step forward. "Who are you?" "That's not the important question," the man said. "The important question is, do you want to keep Echo Time alive?" The way he said it made Leo's stomach tighten. He wasn't asking if they wanted to protect the project from bugs or crashes. He meant survival. Leo crossed his arms. "You've been putting messages in our system. You've been following us. Why?" The man didn't flinch. "Because you're building something dangerous. Not dangerous to people, dangerous to the wrong people's control. Echo Time can't fall into their hands." "Whose hands?" Maya asked. The man glanced toward the street, as if making sure they weren't overheard. "Tech giants, private intelligence firms, and others you've never heard of. They already know what you've built. They're just waiting for you to make a mistake." Leo's mind raced. "And you? Which side are you on?" "I'm on the side that wants you to finish it." but on your terms, not theirs. That was when Leo noticed something in the man's hand, a small black drive. It looked like an ordinary USB stick, but the casing was heavier, reinforced with metal edges. This, the man said, holding it out, is an access key. It's a one-time pathway into a secure server, completely isolated from the public internet. Use it, and you'll be able to store and work on Echo Time without leaving a trail they can follow. Maya didn't reach for it. And what's the catch? There's always a catch, Leo muttered. The man half smiled. The catch is, once you use it, you can't go back. The system wipes itself after 30 days. Your choice will lock you into a timeline. If you're not done by then, Echo Time will be gone, every byte erased. Leo felt the weight of that deadline instantly. 30 days to complete something they'd been working on for nearly a year. It was insane. Why should we trust you? Maya asked. You shouldn't, the man said plainly. Trust no one. But ask yourself, if I meant you harm, why warn you at all? Why give you a tool instead of taking your code? That logic stuck in Leo's mind like a thorn. He didn't like the idea of taking anything from a stranger who had been stalking them. But the sedan, the voice, the embedded messages, all of it suggested he knew far more than he should. What happens if we say no? Leo asked. The man's expression darkened. Then you keep working where you are. And in less than a week, you'll find out exactly how far they'll go to stop you. Maya finally stepped closer, staring at the drive. Why 30 days? Because after that, the man said, Echo Time will no longer be the most important thing in your lives. The words hung heavy in the air. Leo exchanged a glance with Maya. They didn't have enough information to decide, but they didn't have time to demand it either. The man's tone, his knowledge, the strange precision of his warnings, it all pointed toward urgency. Leo reached out slowly and took the drive. It was cold in his hand. The man nodded once, as if that was all he had come for. Remember, they're watching, but they're not the only ones. Use the key wisely. He turned and walked deeper into the alley, disappearing into a side passage that looked like a dead end. Yet somehow, he was gone. Leo and Maya stood in silence for a long moment. The city's hum felt distant, muffled by the enormity of the decision they'd just made. Finally, Maya spoke. 30 days. Leo looked down at the drive in his palm. If he's telling the truth, we just stepped into something way bigger than us. They headed back to the studio without speaking. Every shadow seemed deeper. Every footstep behind them felt like an echo. When they locked the studio door and set the drive on the desk, Leo realized something that made his heart skip. The sedan hadn't returned. It wasn't relief. It was the realization that absence could be more dangerous than presence. Because sometimes when the watchers disappear, it's not because they've stopped caring. It's because they've already set things in motion. When the invention first began appearing outside the inventor's small workshop, it was hard to imagine just how far it would go. At first, it was a novelty, a clever piece of technology that people shared online, a solution to a problem they didn't even realize could be solved so elegantly. But within only a few years, it became part of everyday life, integrated into the routines of millions of people around the world. Homes, offices, and classrooms adopted it rapidly. Teachers found that it helped students complete tasks faster and more efficiently. Businesses discovered that it improved communication and streamlined workflows. Families used it to stay in touch in ways that felt more natural and immediate. The device was no longer just a clever fix. It had become an essential tool. Its presence started influencing the tech industry in unexpected ways. Competing companies began to study its design, looking for ways to match its capabilities or incorporate similar features into their own products. Large corporations, the very ones that had once ignored or dismissed the inventor's work, now raced to release their own versions. While some tried to improve on the original, Many simply acknowledged that the device had set a new standard. Governments and nonprofit organizations also took notice. In remote regions where access to reliable communication tools had been limited, this invention opened new opportunities. It allowed communities to connect to the internet more affordably, share information in real time, and access educational resources. In emergency situations, it provided faster coordination between aid workers and local authorities, helping to save lives. The shift was not only technological, but cultural. The invention encouraged a mindset that technology could be simple, accessible, and adaptable. It showed that high-impact innovation didn't need to come from massive research budgets or advanced laboratories. Many young people, inspired by the story, began tinkering with their own devices, creating small-scale solutions to everyday problems. Media outlets frequently covered these stories, framing them as part of a broader movement sparked by the original invention. The narrative wasn't just about one product anymore. It was about a new wave of creativity that challenged traditional tech hierarchies. Universities began offering courses inspired by the inventor's approach, blending practical repair skills with principles of design thinking. Economically, the effects were substantial. Entire industries grew around producing accessories, compatible tools, and software enhancements for the device. Small businesses thrived by offering customized versions, while large manufacturers expanded production lines to meet global demand. In many regions, new jobs were created not only in factories, but also in logistics, sales, and technical support. As adoption spread, so did the device's influence on policy. In some countries, it was incorporated into official government programs aimed at improving digital access for underserved populations. Tech regulations were updated to encourage similar forms of innovation, ensuring that products remained repairable and modifiable by their users. But perhaps the most profound impact was on people's perception of technology itself. The invention bridged the gap between complex engineering and everyday usability. It wasn't intimidating. It invited exploration. Owners often felt comfortable opening it up, tweaking settings, or even replacing components themselves. This empowerment created a generation of users who were not only consumers, but active participants in shaping how technology served their needs. By the end of its first decade in existence, the invention had reached markets on every continent. From dense urban centers to remote villages, it was in use. Its success proved that innovation could start with something broken, evolve through persistence and creativity, and ultimately reshape the global technological landscape. What began as a personal fix for a single broken device had grown into a worldwide movement, one that changed industries, connected communities, and inspired countless others to imagine what else could be built from the challenges in front of them. The moment the invention went viral, everything changed. One day, the inventor was hand-assembling units at a small workbench, packaging them with handwritten labels and shipping them out in small batches. The next, orders were flooding in from across the globe. Emails, phone calls, and online messages poured in faster than they could be answered. The demand was exciting, but it was also overwhelming. At first, the inventor tried to keep up the same way they always had. Late nights, early mornings, and long hours bent over the workbench. But it quickly became clear that the process was unsustainable. What had once been a hobby, then a small business, was now a full-scale operation that needed more than one pair of hands. The first step was finding help. Friends and family volunteered, learning how to solder parts, package products, and manage customer service. But even with the extra help, production still lagged behind demand. Customers were willing to wait weeks, sometimes months. But the inventor knew that if they couldn't deliver quickly, someone else would try to copy the design and take over the market. That realization brought a new challenge: manufacturing. Scaling up meant moving beyond the tools and materials available in a small workshop. The inventor began visiting local factories, talking to suppliers, and studying how mass production worked. It was a steep learning curve. Every decision involved costs, risks, and trade-offs. Finding the right manufacturing partner was critical. Some companies promised speed but cut corners on quality. Others wanted to change the design entirely to make it easier to produce. The inventor insisted on keeping the features that made the device special, even if it meant slower growth at first. After weeks of searching, they found a small but capable manufacturer willing to work closely with them to maintain the device's original integrity. As production ramped up, new obstacles appeared. Shipping large quantities required better packaging, more reliable delivery systems, and international distribution partners. The inventor had to navigate import and export regulations, tariffs, and customs procedures. Mistakes were costly, and every delay meant disappointed customers. Then there was the matter of protecting the invention. Copycat versions began appearing online within months of the viral breakthrough. Some were crude imitations that barely worked, but others were close enough to confuse buyers. The inventor filed for patents, trademarks, and design protections, but legal processes took time and resources. In the meantime, they focused on building a strong brand that customers trusted, knowing that loyalty could be just as powerful as legal protection. The sudden expansion also required the inventor to learn a completely different set of skills. Running a business at this scale meant managing budgets, negotiating contracts, and hiring employees. They began reading business books, seeking advice from mentors, and attending industry events. Each step forward came with its own set of lessons, sometimes learned the hard way. Despite the stress, there were moments of excitement and pride. Seeing the device being used in faraway countries, reading messages from people whose lives had been improved by it, and watching the production line assemble hundreds of units in a single day all reminded the inventor why they had started this journey in the first place. By the end of the first year of scaling up, the operation had transformed. What had once been a cramped workshop was now a coordinated network of production facilities, suppliers, and distribution centers. The inventor had a small team, a growing customer base, and a product that was no longer just a clever idea. It was a global business. But with growth came pressure. Every decision carried higher stakes. Every delay affected thousands of customers. And while the inventor had mastered the art of building and improving the device, they were now learning the equally important skill of sustaining success in a competitive world. The next chapter of the story would be about more than making a great product. It would be about keeping it relevant, accessible, and trusted, even as the market evolved and new challengers emerged. Years after the first spark of inspiration, the world had grown so accustomed to the invention that many forgot it had ever been new. It was no longer a novelty or a trending topic. It was simply part of life. Yet for the inventor, every time they saw it in use, whether in a bustling office tower or in the hands of a student in a remote village, it was a reminder of how far one idea could travel. The journey from that small apartment to a global stage had been filled with challenges, triumphs, and moments of uncertainty. There had been late nights spent fixing early production mistakes, tense negotiations with suppliers, and constant pressure to stay ahead of imitators. But through it all, the core mission never changed: to create something useful, accessible, and adaptable for as many people as possible. Looking back, the inventor often reflected on the moment the device first broke, the frustration, the temptation to give up, and the decision to take a closer look instead. It was a choice made in an instant, but it shaped the course of the next decade. That single act of curiosity had not only led to a successful product, but had ignited a broader movement in the technology world. The invention's legacy extended far beyond its physical design. It had altered the culture of innovation. Tech companies, both large and small, began to recognize the value of openness and user-centered design. Products became easier to repair and modify, not because regulations demanded it, but because consumers now expected it. The story had shifted the balance of power in subtle ways, giving everyday people more influence over the tools they used. Educators and mentors often used the inventor's story as a teaching tool. In classrooms, it became a case study in creativity, resilience, and problem-solving. Students learned that expertise wasn't always a prerequisite for invention, that determination and curiosity could be equally powerful. Many who heard the story went on to start their own projects, citing the broken device as the moment they realized innovation was within their reach. Communities that had benefited most from the invention also carried its legacy forward. In places where it had improved communication, access to education, or emergency response, local innovators began adapting it for unique regional needs. It wasn't just copied, it evolved in the hands of its users, becoming more than its creator could have originally imagined. The inventor, now recognized as a pioneer, resisted the idea of being seen as a lone genius. They often reminded interviewers that the device's success had been built on collaboration, friends who offered feedback, engineers who helped refine the design, and countless users whose suggestions led to improvements. In their view, the legacy belonged to everyone who had contributed along the way. As time went on, the original model became a collector's item, displayed in museums dedicated to technology and innovation. Visitors who saw it behind glass often remarked at how simple it looked compared to the advanced versions in circulation. Yet, that simplicity was the point. It was proof that the beginning of something transformative doesn't have to be perfect. The real measure of its legacy was not in sales figures or awards, but in the shift it caused in how people approached problems. It inspired a mindset that when something breaks, the first reaction shouldn't always be to replace it, but to understand it. That shift in thinking would go on to influence countless future inventions, many of which might never have existed if not for the example set by that broken device. In the end, the story came full circle. The inventor, standing once again in a modest workspace, this time surrounded by new tools, prototypes, and a team of collaborators, reflected on the path taken. What had started as a personal frustration had become a source of hope and possibility for millions. And somewhere out there, another person was staring at something broken, wondering if they could fix it. The inventor smiled at the thought. They knew that history had a way of repeating itself, and that the next revolution might already be taking shape in the hands of someone willing to look closer, take a risk, and see opportunity where others only saw failure.